Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Podcast. I'm Mark Cole, and as you know, our goal, just like John's legacy statement that he will make in the lesson today, is to add value to you so that you will then go and multiply value to others. In this week's episode, John is talking about how you can intentionally grow the people on your team. Now, on John Maxwell's podcast, you know we talk about personal growth often. Today's a little bit different because the purpose, the focal point of growth is so that you can grow with others around you. So in this lesson, my good friend and co-host Chris Goede and I will be talking about not only how we grow ourselves, but some practical ways that you can apply what John's taught and grow the people around you as well. If you would like to download the bonus resource for this episode, you can go to maxwellpodcast.com/grow your people. If you're a longtime listener to the podcast and you would like to check us out on YouTube, we have the podcast available to you and love our YouTube family as well. I'm so excited about today. I'm so excited about growing. I'm so excited about growing you so you can grow others. Here is John Maxwell.
Here's the thesis of the lesson. The most effective way to grow an organization is to grow the people in it. That's a fact. There are no limits to an organization if we put no limits on our people. So, what are some growth practices of growing people? As I've studied growing people, there are some things that you can just say are true about those people that are developing. Number one, the first growth practice is to develop a game plan to grow others. In other words, growth is not an accident. So if you're going to grow, you've got to have a game plan. You have to be intentional. Growth is not an automatic process. It just doesn't happen accidentally. Okay, the highest function of a leader is not just to lead others. The highest function of a leader is to produce leaders who can lead others. In other words, let's just talk about logical choice for just a moment. It's wonderful if we can train you and equip you to be a leader. But it's even more wonderful when we can train and equip you to be a leader, to turn around and train someone else to be a leader. You see, if it's only stops with you, it's only addition. But if it goes beyond you, it becomes multiplication. And so when we talk about growing organizations, how do we compound ourselves? How do we multiply ourselves? By training people to train others. It's never enough just to know. We must be doers of what we know. Increase comes by action, not by knowledge. So mentoring requires being before doing. And we have no business practicing what we have not become. This is why maturity must come before success. Character must precede our career. If maturity doesn't come before success, guess what? How many times have we seen people who grabbed hold of success but didn't have maturity and, they just basically sabotage themselves? So, when we grow people, one of the principles of growing people is very simple. You have to have a game plan. It has to be intentional. Number two, you have to put yourself in the personal growth picture. In other words, very simple, this isn't for others, this is for you. Have you ever heard somebody teach and you listened to them teach and you thought, man, that is so good. I wish so-and-so was here to hear that. You know what I'm saying? I got to write this down and I got to tell them because they really need this. Now, I want to make myself real clear. I'm not talking about the person to your left. I'm not talking about the person to your right. I'm talking about you. It's impossible to grow people in the organization if the growth is always for someone else. It always starts with me. And now that takes me to what I consider to be the number one motivational principle in the world. People do what people see. 89%, this is not in your notes, Stanford research will tell you, 89% of what you and I learn, we learn visually. And what is leadership? Leadership is visual. Leadership is visually showing others the example. So if you're going to grow people within the organization, it's got to start with you as the leader. It starts with you. The key to equipping is modeling. Most of what we learn is observed, caught, not taught. Great leaders take the vision from me to we. But make no mistake, it starts with me. The third thing that we need to do to grow ourselves and have a growing organization, put your people in the personal growth picture. After you put yourself in there and say, I'm responsible to grow me, Now put your people in the picture and say, I'm responsible to grow them. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, The Tipping Point, talks about, he calls it the law of the few. And he discusses the leverage a leader can have by investing in a few who can have great impact on others. There are certain people who can help you create change and forward progress because they will talk with and influence other people. In other words, the law of the few from Gladwell was just very simple. You go find the few that are going to have the heavy producing, and you put your time, effort, and energy in that. My legacy statement is, I want to add value to leaders who multiply value to others. So what do I spend my time? With the leaders. Number 4, create a growth culture in your organization. If you want to grow the people within your organization, you got to change the culture of your organization and have a growth culture. A growth culture includes 1, behavior of leaders that show the value of personal growth. In other words, a growth culture, a logical choice is the fact that you see leaders that are growing. And in their behavior, so it just says, oh my goodness, my leaders are growing. Number 2, intentional practices that encourage personal growth. In other words, what are the intentional practices at logical choice that you can use? What are the good choices you can make that will really show personal growth? What are the intentional practices we're going to have? Let me give you just 4 real quick examples. Personal development breaks, where you give a person maybe a day to reflect on where they are and are they growing and are they developing. Remember, reflection turns experience into insight. That's what reflection does. Number 2 is personal development training. In other words, do you have time set aside for training and learning? What specific thing are you doing here that would say, this is how we're developing and growing leaders? What is our plan? The 3rd area is personal development discussion, time for sharing. That's where you get together and you talk about how you're growing, how you're learning. One of the things I learned early in developing people is the fact that the more you can get them to sit around the table and talk about how they're growing and how they're learning, the more contagious it becomes. And then finally, personal development projects. Time for experience. What are the projects? What projects are you now doing that would develop personal growth? Creating this culture of personal development essentially helps your employees to raise the bar a little higher for themselves, their families, and for each other. Jim Rohn, don't just help people with their jobs, but help people with their lives, as your greater purpose would have you to do. Touch people and teach people, not just job skills, but life skills. Don't just teach people how to work, but how to live, how to assimilate, how to accumulate far greater treasures than just a paycheck. Growth principle number 5, in growing people and growing organizations. Number 5, connect with them. If you're going to grow your people, you've got to have that connection with them. And connecting requires energy, so you got to give it a lot of effort. And connecting requires understanding. You got to ask a lot of questions. So when people come to me and say, you know what, I want to develop and equip and train people, I want to grow people in my organization, I ask them, are you willing to give the energy? And part of the energy that you give in connecting with people is, are you willing to listen? Because the great leaders, they listen, they learn, and then they lead. And that's a cycle that never stops. They listen, they learn, and they lead. So connecting goals, when you connect with people, there are some goals that you have. One is to strengthen relationships. So when you connect with a person, the relationships become stronger. Number 2, to earn trust. You cannot connect, and I cannot connect with anyone without earning trust. Thirdly, to position them properly. It goes back to, Jim Collins, get the right people on the bus with me, get them in the right seat in the bus. 4, to create clear expectations of what you want to get accomplished. 5, to determine capacity. What is their capacity? What is their potential? And 6, to discover strengths. This is all part of connecting with people. Okay, to grow people within your organization, let's go to number 6. Give them a challenging project. Now, a challenging project, here's what it'll do. This will help them. This will help determine, when you set the bar high for people, this helps determine the emotional, creative, and ability capacity of people. And these are different things. You want to see emotionally what their capacity is. Because I know a lot of people, they have the ability, but they don't have the emotional capacity. So you want to check, how are they emotionally, how are they creatively, and how are they ability-wise? What is their ability capacity, creative capacity, and emotional capacity? You want to begin to test that to find out what they are. In other words, here's what a leader is always asking. A leader is always asking, how much can they do? How do I get maximum potential out of a person? Number 7, if you're going to grow people in the organization, you have to empower them. Got to empower them. Wow. If all you give your people are orders, all that you'll ever get from them is order takers. And one of the things that is essential in growing people is empowerment. So let me talk to you about empowerment for just a moment. Empowerment is all about big picture, first of all. It's not just doing the task. Empowerment is why you do the task. See, empowerment is much bigger than the job you do. It is making you the person, not only to be able to do that job, but to make you a person that's bigger than that job. It's big picture. That's what empowerment is. And empowerment is about accountability. Because once people have been given power, they become accountable. Ken Blanchard writes, empowerment means you have the freedom to act. It also means you're accountable for results. I like that a lot. One last closing thing. I had a person come up to me one time and say, John, all this training and equipping people you talk about all the time, I've done that. And let me tell you the downside of training and equipping and empowering people and growing people is the fact that you train them and then they leave you and go to another company. And you say, man, I just put time, money, resources in that person. There they went off with someone else and they're going to reap the benefits. I said, nothing could be worse than putting that time, effort, energy, and money and people and train them and then having them leave. I said, oh, no, I can tell you something that's a lot worse than that. This is what's that. Not training them and having them stay. So let's begin to grow our people so we can grow our organization.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
Hey, welcome back. I'm so glad to be digging into this with Chris. I think you, Chris, I certainly want to. One of our greatest passions is growing the team around us. Yeah. There's a quote by Jack Welch that says, the most important job you have is growing your people, giving them a chance to reach their dreams. And I think that's so true. I think that's a chief responsibility of leadership, is to let your leadership be such that it impacts others. John asked this question. We meet with a lot of presidents and senates and representatives from other countries. And John will ask them the question all the time, will the people be better when your job here is done? And I love that question. It's a great question for all of us as leaders. Will people that you're leading be better because of your leadership? And certainly helping them grow is a chief responsibility.
100%. And, you know, one of my favorite books that John has written in the last couple of years is The Leader's Greatest Return. And as executives around the world will be like, hey, you got to read this book, right? Leader's Greatest Return. So what do? They want to know right down at the bottom of the financials, like, how does this improve my EBITDA?
Exactly.
Right? That's not what John's talking about at all. And I think that as you begin to develop and grow in your leadership, when you begin to see the fruit of people that are around you, because of your intentionality, which we're going to talk a little bit about that today and who's all involved in the growth process, man, that's the greatest return.
No doubt.
Right? We're in the people business. We talk about that, and that's what's important. Let me, from my lens real quick, let me start us off with something I think is so important. So if you're in an organization, you're leading a team or an organization, I'm fascinated to watch the surveys that come back on an annual basis of why people are choosing certain organizations over another. What is it about it? Of course, culture is part of that. Of course, compensation is a part of that. Skill set match, all that stuff. but it is fascinating to watch this one line that I've seen move up over the last couple of years where it says they have to be assured that there's a growth and a career, personal growth and a career development plan in place for them before they say yes. I'm like, oh my gosh, like there are organizations that are not even thinking about this. And so I just wanted to throw that out there because we're going to talk today about game plan. We're going to talk about growth personally. How do you develop people around you? What does the culture of your organization in regards to growth look like? And it's just so important. It's so important.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. This is what we do, right? We're here to help people on a journey, a leadership journey. And so part of that is developing a game plan, and not only a game plan for your personal growth, but also for others. And I know that ever since I've been inside this organization with you, there is intentionality behind here is what our expectations are of leaders to have a plan for those that are working with you on the team to take them from point A, sometimes it might be to point B, sometimes it might be to K. So as you lead Maxwell leadership, and it's such a passion for you, you and I could talk about sports analogies all the time, but why is it so important to have a game plan for growth for other people inside the organization or your team?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say, the reason it's important, because it was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
I've said often on this podcast that it was truly the question that David Hoyt asked me, what is your growth plan, as my leader in John's organization, that made me aware I needed to be intentional about my growth. And most of the time, we have people on our team that don't even know they need to be focused on that. I love the stat that you gave just a moment ago, and I believe that's right. For so long, we paid people because why were we paying them? To help grow our company.
Yeah.
But yet we didn't realize that should be reciprocated. And if we grow them, pay them well, but grow them, guess what happens? They grow the company.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I think that real revelation, both as a company owner and as a person that's worked for a company for a long time, it really does go both ways. So I think the first reason I would answer that is it made such a difference for me. I want it to make a difference for others. It's a true heart to see others be impacted by intentionality around growth. I think also as a business owner, what I just said is if I grow people, their enhanced capacity expands their responsibility in the organization, so the organization grows. I think the other reason that I would tell you is when you create a human element, that it's more than just the colloquialism, our people are our greatest asset.
Right.
No, when you really begin to create a culture that says we are going to challenge our people, and not only challenge them, we're going to require them to identify how they're growing. I get asked all the time, how do I get good people on the team? I'd say you've got to hire growing people. Hire good people. Okay, that's easy.
Right.
Everybody
That's
says,
right.
no, hire growing people. So to this day, when I'm interviewing somebody, which y'all don't let me do very much
we
anymore,
do not.
Chris.
Or John. You or John.
Me or
You're
John.
in the same category.
But when I do get to interview people, my standout question in every interview is, what are you growing in right now? And how is it making a difference for you? And how is it making a difference for the people around you?
Yeah.
That growth question and creating that growth culture begins to let people know, hey, personal growth is important, it's required, it's expected in an organization like this.
And I think what I love about this being number one as a game plan is in order to have a game plan, by the way, it takes some preparation. It takes for you as an individual to sit down and say, hey, I've got to intentionally think about what am I going to do over the next 30, 60, 90 days in this plan for Mark, if Mark and I were working together, right? Like what I love about that is you can't just walk into a meeting and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and start coaching and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I want to see growth in this area. Like you got to come back and say, what does this plan look like? How are we going to attack the game? What are we going to do in the first quarter, the second quarter? We'll make some adjustments at halftime. What do we do in the third quarter and the fourth quarter? The other reason I love this is that then it gives you something to measure against.
That's exactly right.
Right? Like we can sit in here and philosophically say we're going to grow our team. At the end of the year, say, well, where'd you grow? Okay, that's great. But no, let's go back and look at what we talked about 12 months ago. Where are we at on that? And it's whether you do it by assessments or you do it through conversation, whatever it might be.